UR stands for Universal Result. It's a way to normalize the information you send back from a procedure. For this particular library, I think it's easier if we just start off with an example, rather than going into the philosophy and the details of it right off the bat. In fact, we'll discuss the philosophy as we go. But let's go ahead and begin simply by importing our library and creating a procedure that allows us to print a hello message to somebody. And in this particular example, literally the procedure we're going to write is going to return a string that says hello, comma, and then the person's name. But the problem is we don't have the person's name. We're going to do the equivalent of a database lookup because all we have is their username. So that's going to be our procedure. Let me write that real quick and I'll be right back. Okay, here's our code, and we're going to start by not using universal result and show you why you would want to use it and what you can do with it once you do start using it. So here I have, I'm importing string utilities and tables. I'm creating an object called person. This is for I'm going to make kind of a fake database because this video isn't about teaching you how to use a database. So I just basically have a table with a string of usernames attached to a person, and within a person you have got a name of first name and last name to make their name. Okay, so here's my two entries in my database, JER and BB, and here's my procedure to say hello. So it takes in a string, the target user, and returns a string. And so it creates a person, it searches through the loop, and then it uses formats a string and returns it in the result. So if I echo say hello to JER, it should come back and say hello to Jerry Smith. And let's try that out. And there it is. Hello, Jerry Smith. So everything's good so far. So what's next? Well, what if this person doesn't exist? And this is a common scenario, especially when you're working with databases, but also with more complex systems. And that's why I made this example like this. Databases are a common scenario where you want to be able to respond with the right answer, but also with error messages. And in dynamic languages, you could just return an error message instead of the value, and you just detect that automatically. But Nim is a compiled language, so you're going to need some way of responding to that. Now, you could make your own solution by returning, say, a tuple with say, a response code and the answer, or you could do an object of some kind. But this is kind of a way to normalize how you return information back from a procedure. So let's go ahead and add UR into this. Now I'm returning a string, so what I want to do is wrap a string. So I use the macro coming from UR called wrap UR and then string. And now we're going to return a wrapped string. Now that macro creates an object called UR underscore and then whatever type I put into there. So now there's something called UR string. This isn't limited to basic data types. In fact, the most common way to use this is with an object. If I was returning, say, a person, you could wrap UR person and come back with a wrapped object. But let's do this for string here, beginning. So my response will be a new UR string, and still looking for a person, but here I'm going to check to see if I found a person. If person is nil, which means I never set who the person is, result.set. Now we want to set a message. There's a lot of set commands available, but I'm going to use, in this case, set failure, or set failure. Simple message there. And so target user. So I'm setting a failure message. Else, I want to return the actual result. but I can't set result equals to the string because result is now our new object called URString. So I set value to our result. And value changes types based on how the macro interprets the word you're putting in there. So wrap UR creates an object called URString, and URString.value is a string, and that's a universal replacement. So we now have a new type. However, when you're using a universal result, you need to set a message always of some kind. So in this case, I've got a success. And there's a lot of other parameters that are optional here we can put in. We'll explore that here in just a little bit. But success, what do I put here? All good, because we're probably not going to use that, but there we go. Now, I'll need to get a response back, so var r equals, say, hello, jar. If r is okay, I can either put a parameter around it, or I can just do the Nim style of skipping that. Then echo, say, hello, oops, r.value, because that's what I got back. And if it's not okay, I handle the error condition. In this case, I'll simply respond with the error messages. So r.danger messages, and it's called danger rather than error. I'll explain that when we get into the properties of UR. That's based on the Bootstrap CSS specification. As much as possible, I use common standards rather than make up my own. Then better, I think that's the way to go. So I'll either get the value back or I'll get a message. Let's go ahead and do this again with something that will definitely break. So do the same thing here. All right, now let's run it. I should see a positive response back from my procedure as well as a negative one. Assuming I didn't put any typos into it, like that. Oh, yeah, you do have to import the library. Basic library use 101. There we go. By the way, as a point of habit, I tend to separate my import statements between things that are part of the standard library, things that are part of the Nimble libraries, and then I'll oftentimes have another import statement for things that are local to my own program that I'm writing. That's just a personal preference, but thought I'd mention. All right, let's quickly remove errors. Okay, can't do an is nil unless it's like a ref object. All right, so. Oh, yep. There it is. Okay, the first time we called the hello procedure, we got hello Jerry Smith. And the second time we called it, we got back a list. In this case, it found that ASD ASF not found, which is the username I passed in here. So that was one of the list of danger messages, and there was only one because I only set failure once. Now let's go ahead and integrate this before I get into wide details about all the different types of messages you can set up and all other kinds of setups, things you can do with it. Let's go ahead and show this how this could be used with the logging function. So rather than echo the message up here, well, I'll keep echoing it, but let's go ahead and set the results to our logger. So let's go ahead and add logging into our program. And let me go look up how to set up logging. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. I'm going to cheat by looking up code here while we're talking. RL equals new, let's make it a new file logger. And any parameters? Yeah, make it verbose. Okay, add handler. L. So that should turn on the thing as a whole. And let's import the submodule for handling this from so log. So now we can start logging our results. And the nice thing about universal result is that it's, especially with that library there, it's already built in. The verbosity level of the log messages is set by passing parameters into the messages. So let's go ahead and log both of these things. So no matter what I display, I want to go ahead and log it. So r dot, and now I can do send log, I believe. Is that right? Yeah, send log. So there, it sends the result to the log. Same thing here. That's send log. There we go. Now we should see messages start to show up in my logger under test.log. Let's try this out. Okay, test.log. There it is. Success, user, all good. Danger, user, ASDF not found. Both of those entries are now in here. I believe by default, Logger will log all messages that are sent to it, but you can change the level. You do that by passing parameters into the set failure or set success messages. You can also change things like your target audience. If you see back here, we've got a user audience. That's the default. But if I only want this to be seen by admins, where am I? Failure. Okay. Audience equals ops. Now only the audience, the only op will be operations. Let's go ahead and run this again. Let's save it and run it. There. And now ops is the only audience for this. This is a success and danger. Again, those are from standards. Let's go ahead and play with this a little bit more. Let's say I want this to automatically only go to ops. Well, if this is an actual bug, in this particular case, it's not a bug because that's kind of an expected failure. But let's say this is a bug. Well, whoops. Bugs should automatically go to ops. And I'll show you later, you can look all this up in the documentation, but this restricts this to ops automatically because bugs really shouldn't be mentioned to the end users. It's really meant for ops to go back and take a look at. It also changed the severity level of the entry. So let's go and save it and run it. And now we should see what? Oh, why? Let me go look it up. It's not set bug. That's probably not what I'm looking for. Here we go. Set internal bug. I forgot the word internal. You can request other types of settings in here if you wish. Simply put up an issue on the repo. Let's see. There we go, set internal bug. And once again, it's set to ops, but this time I didn't have to explicitly declare it. So now let's go ahead and take a look at there's a lot to this, more than just coming back with an okay or not okay. And the reason for that is this might be usable in other frameworks where this can provide you far more information that might be useful, but not just in debugging scenarios. You can, by the way, add details to universal results so that you can add, say, categorization if you want to. And to do that, you simply wrap with, I'll show you the change here. Instead of saying wrap UR, you just do wrap UR detail. And now there is a result.detail function, which is a table of strings that allows you to add more categorization for your own handler for the results. That's way beyond what I want to cover in this particular video, but it's very convenient under certain circumstances. For example, right now I'm writing a library that handles return conditions for a website. And there's some of these messages I want to flash on the next page to the end user who's looking at the HTML. Well, to do that, I need a way of passing back information to make available. Also, I want my end users to be able to see some of the logs of their account, of things that have happened to their account. Well, I store logs and I set the permissions based on the results back from Universal Result. In other words, it's all integrated, and it makes it much easier to integrate this into other systems. In fact, that's what this logger is meant to be. It's an initial example of how you can integrate this library not only into your own code, but into the code of other systems. Let's take a look at some of the details on the inside. What that macro does, the wrap UR, is it creates this object right here. It creates a UR underscore, in this case we did string, but it could be anything, and it's got a sequence of events, and each of those events has a message, a level, a class, and an audience. And then of course it's got a value that's set to the type here. If any of the events are marked as danger, and that's how you judge the event. You've got info, success, and warning, and danger. If any of them are marked as danger, then the value could be set, but you shouldn't treat it as a legitimate value. So that's your error condition. If any of the events are marked as danger, that's the error. And that's what OK does. It actually searches all the events and see if any of them are marked as danger. Otherwise, it's OK. And you can not only pass a success message back, which we did in our example, you can also pass back a warning, which means, yes, I'm giving you an answer, but something doesn't look right. It's a descriptive message. So it's a OK, but take things into consideration. You can also pass in neutral information, a simple information net message, again, useful for logging purposes. So let's say, for example, this routine we use in the example not only looked up the user, but it had to call 4 more routines, and each of those used UR results. It is possible to add the results from those routines into our list of results. So you may come back with 20 messages. Again, you wouldn't necessarily want to see that all the time. You're just doing a .ok to see if you had a good result or not. But if everything passed, some of those info messages or warning messages might be very useful from a debugging point of view. So it allows a very universal way of getting all that stuff back and storing it. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the characteristics of this. So for each event, we've got a level, a class, and an audience. Briefly, the level describes how important it is. How critical is this? How verbose should this be? And so these are the typical logging levels you see in loggers, like syslog. They've got everything from debug all the way up to fatal. Now, this is kind of deceiving in the warning here, because when the people that made the logger, they were really thinking about the end users would never see the logs. So they wrote it really from the perspective of how does operations want to see this. And so when they say something's a level of warning or a level of error, they don't necessarily mean that there was an error. They mean this is at the log level of error. I know that's a subtle distinction sometimes. But there might be, for example, a success that is so critical to your system that you set it the level to error, but the class, which is here, the class to success, which means it's a good thing that happened, nothing broke, use the information, but I want operations and all parties to see this because it's very important. Again, you mix and match the different characteristics here. So that's the logging level. Class is the judgment. This is based on the Bootstrap CSS project. And of course, they got different colors for these different things if you're going to display it to the end user. But you've got information, success, and warning and danger. Those are the 4 possibilities. And then you've got your audience, which is a rights question. Who should be allowed to see this? So you've got operations, admins, which are your end users that have special clearance. For example, let's say, I don't know, say in a forum, you know, you can't post unless you're a registered user, so that would put you at the user level. But some people have special admin rights because they have the ability to remove posts and that type of thing. So these are users with special clearance, then users, regular users, and then public. Someone's not even logged in. Should the whole world be able to see this message? Now, again, these are all independent characteristics of the event. So it is possible, for example, to have something that the whole world's allowed to see. You know, so-and-so posted this message. But you don't necessarily want them to see it because that might be like at the bug level. You don't want to flood the end users with 50 messages every time they change pages. So again, mix and match the characteristics based on the context of what you're doing. And there is details, by the way. There's good examples here on the website where I show you how you can add a category to something. And then in your test log, or a log that we're creating, you can add the category to it and change the look and feel of things. So that essentially it has a little bit of flexibility with a table of strings. That's the basics of it. If you do find any problems with this, do please place a message in the issues section of the repository. I can't guarantee you that I'll fix it because this is a voluntary project, or you can send in a pull request that repairs the problem. It does not work necessarily with all known types. I know that it works with your basic types like strings, integers, floats. It also works with objects of all kinds and tuples, but it's not necessarily universal. Nim has a lot of types available, and I'm just now systematically getting through all the different types. But it definitely works with objects, tuples, and a lot of your basic types. Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe.